Hello my friends, welcome to another episode of Chronicon. My name is Wilfred. So in my last video, I've shared with you how to do theory crafting to derive the damage that you see on your power. So for example, if you take a look at your skill here, you'll see that this particular skill does like a 60 million to 22 million car range. But you can actually derive that and work that out as well. So I've in my last video, I've already talked about that, so I'm not going to repeat in this video. Now, but in this video, what I would like to talk about is that when you do enchanting, for example, you may come across a gear whereby you can actually pick a lot of affixes, a whole list of major affixes to it, whole list of minor affixes to it. And when you talk about DPS, right, damage, which one is better than the other, or what is a priority? And henceforth, I'd like to share with you in this video with the mathematics behind it as well, how I derived that. Now, bear in mind that Chronicon is a very in-deep game, so even for a class, even for the same set we are using, we could pick different things to play. So there's no hard and fast rule, and this is always about trying to analyze for that build that you're having and see what works for you. So I'd like to share with you how I do it. You can apply the same methodology to the build that you're using as well. Not necessarily, the same build as mine, but you can use the same kind of method. I presume so. Now, the good news is that because I play this game for hundreds of hours, so I kind of know what are my priorities for what kind of build, and some of them I need to work out it a little bit mathematically, but I'm quite happy that all the affixes I've chosen in this enchanting kind of it's probably one of the best that I could get so far. And just to recap, for those who are not familiar with Chronicon, is that you unlike Diablo 3 or other games, ARPG, you have to rely on the randomness to get the gear with the fixes that you want. You may change one of them, but by and large, you have to accept whatever that's being handed to you from the randomness of the nature of the game. But the good thing about Chronicon is not. All the affixes you see here, not the yellow one, the white one, you can change all of them. You can pick any one you want. You can pick I don't want to have health. Instead, I want to have maybe overpower. I don't want to have cooldown reduction. I may want to have, say, experience. You can pick the one that you want. And then you can also increase the range until the max. So, unlike other games like Diablo, whereby you have to wait until they drop you with a high range item and then you use it. There's nothing like that. You can just craft the item to the maximum. Now, of course, it takes time and it takes commitments to it. It's not something that rely on randomness, but it rely on your effort to play the game and to get the crafting material and to further on. But having said that, you still have a lot of affixes to choose. Each one of the gear here, they have a whole list of look at this one here. Epic, there's a whole list to it, affixes to it. Majors, there's a whole list of affixes to it. Minor, there's a whole list of it. So which one would you like to pick? So that is what this video, to focus on the key DPS stat. Now, if you are uncertain about the stats itself, just go to the health menu, help in that. Go into the stat, explain that. And you can clearly say that, they even give you a formula, what is diminishing return and how to calculate diminishing return. From what I've seen so far, majority of diminishing return is applied to the defensive stat, as well as some of the, maybe cooldown reduction and so on. So beyond which, crit hit damage, those things would not have diminishing return. That's very important to understand that, because as you work out the mathematics, then you'll see what is worth it to put into what kind of stat and become a priority here. So you can just scroll down and kind of read all the things here and to understand. And don't just bear in mind that although the attack speed may not benefit hero whereby you use a lot of cooldown power, but it does reduce animation speed. So it's another good thing about the game as well, because a lot of time as you play other ARPG, there's animations and you like to shorten the animation, and well, you can through attack speed. So just some of these very quick highlight to you, but the scope of today's today's topic is really about just a couple of them. balancing between the crit hit chance, crit hit damage, overpower, damage, and versus the percentage of damage. And I think these are the 5 steps that's most important when it comes to building your character in terms of DPS. Now, of course, every build will have their nuances. And for this particular build, because I'm using a Thorn Warlock build, just to recap again, for those who are just tuned in for this Warlock set of video, is that look at the set bonus 2. My bone skill has my damage increased by 25% of thorns, and I'm using a retaliation set as well to add thorn based on my health as well as a damage. So the formula works a little bit differently, but it just demonstrates if you play any other builds out there, you can also work that kind of like differences to what you have as well. And last but not the least, just to recap on last video, I'm talking about a note here whereby my thorn deal shadow damage versus the bane damage. Now, for those who may be a little bit sharp in the eyes, may recognize that, wait a minute, if my thorn without any shadow buff and versus the shadow buff, why is it not 5 times, 5.7 times, right? Because if you look at it, well, I'm supposed to transform my thorn damage from normal, from physical into shadow, then I should be having 5.7 times. Well, I have the question too. I was about to ask the developer, but then I can't work that one out myself. So basically, my mastery in a way that the way that mastery is set up and whatever that you have set up here is actually increasing the overall damage, BS poison, frost, fire, and whatnot. And what you can't see here, because I haven't re-geared for it, is a physical damage. So physical damage is the one that concerning about Thorn. So Thorn is doing physical damage. So it'll be roughly 160. So what happened mathematically is that if you divide this number by 160%, then multiply by 570% is what you have, the 75 million there. So everything worked out fine. I always love numbers because numbers don't lie. Now, then the next question, because my Warlock build, right, my damage contribute to Thorn, but how much of it translated to Thorn? Because I need to work out formula to do trade-off. So I did some analysis to it before the buff and after buff. As you can see, it's just a linear. Linear is beautiful because linear is very straightforward, right? Thorn equals to A plus B times damage, and that is how you work out a Thorn. So what I've done is that because I got mastery point, I take a few data point, and to see my Thorn versus the damage as I increase the damage through the mastery. So I did one with the buff one. Maybe the unbuff one is not that interesting. The buff one is more interesting. You can see that as my damage increased from 24,000 to 71,000, my Thorn increased from 61 million to 75 million. So that is a Thorn value that I've got. So basically, it's just a formula. The formula is very straightforward. It's the amount of Thorn is the amount of Thorn is 55 million. That's a base. So regardless of what damage I have 55 million. So the damage actually increased the remaining one of it by multiplying the damage with 275, and that is the formula, right? 275 plus the 55 million plus 275 times the damage will become my Thorns. Now that is very specific to my character. You cannot copy this. This formula will not. Well, these values will not work for you, but the formula will work for you. So, depending on your character, depending on how you what kind of gear that you use, you may have a different A and B, but then the formula is always T equals to A plus B times damage. All right. So now, why do you want to do that? Is that you can then do a trade-off like this one. All right. So now, I'm just going to walk through with you how I do it, so you can do it yourself as well. But in case you want to skip through all the mumbo jumbo and say, so tell me, Wilfred, so what is the stat priority? So for my particular build, for this Warlock Thorns build, and I presume it will apply to majority of the builds out there, that's not pet build, right? Pet build is something else. You have to work out the formula in another way. But overpower is always the most important stat, followed by the crit hit chance, followed by the crit hit damage, followed by your elemental percentage, and followed by the damage. This is the last one. I'm looking at the Enchanting again, because when you do greater Enchanting, you can have up to 150 damage versus 22% overpower versus 20% crit hit chance versus 35% shadow damage percentage versus 35% crit hit damage. So this is what I'm comparing, right? So this is the one I'm comparing here. Now, also bear in mind that there's a cap to overpower, and crit hit chance, of course, can't go beyond 100. So what you see here, because I'm actually close to cap, so my trade-off become rather interesting for me, because I got to see whether I should overcap it. Is it still worth it? But you know, if you don't have a cap here, meaning that your overpower and your crit is below the 78%, then the whole profile works. This order worked beautifully. It just overpower greater than higher priority than crit hit chance, higher priority than crit hit damage, higher priority than the elemental percentage if you are doing one single power, one single element, and then greater than the damage itself. All right. So now, just quickly run through how I do that, right? So first of all, I always have a set of parameters here. So I have 5 parameters, changing the damage, shadow damage, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and overpower. So you can see that, you know, for this scenario, I increase the crit hit chance by 20%, but I decrease the crit hit damage by 35%. For example, that is what I mean, all this title. This one is the other way around. Then after that, I increase the crit hit chance, and then I decrease the damage, and do a vice versa, and then I increase the crit hit damage, and I decrease the damage, and vice versa. So I compare all the different combination and to see which one will win across all the stats I have. Now, so these are the adjustment, right? Adjustment. The damage itself here is very straightforward. I just take whatever baseline. This is my baseline, right? This is the baseline, which is the hero I've got here. And then after that, I edit the parameter and become the damage itself. Shadow damage is the same thing as well. Thorns are a little bit different, because for thorns, what I remember the formula is 55 million plus 275 times the damage is my thorn. But then after that, I need to adjust by the increase or decrease in shadow damage, because in some scenario later on, I'll actually have I actually decreased or increased the shadow damage. So the thorn will work out in that way. All right. There's no change to the gear damage, because I'm not changing I'm not putting a parameter on bane power, bone skill, nor the Nova skill, whatever it is. So this stay as 12,000% throughout all the scenario, and it's not part of the formula here. Now, to calculate the skill damage, like I said before, very straightforward. Just take the damage, flat damage times the shadow damage times the gear damage, which you see in your character there on the gear damage, which is this one here, by the way. Just want to make sure that you guys know what I'm talking about. This one here, instantly dealing whatever percentage of the shadow damage. So that is the one that I'm talking about here. So that will give you the calculated skill damage. Now, Thorn, we have to take it outside of the skill power, because the set, Master Kit set, will add Thorn on top of whatever damage you're dealing, and that is the there's a thorn that you're having. So it's 18,000 there. So 18 million, sorry. So you've got overall 67 million if you do this way. Now, then the next bit is very much like Marvel Hero stage, right? If you recall, there's always a crit chance, crit hit damage. So I have a crit hit chance, and I have to I have to do a mean to it so that it capped at 100%. So you add the baseline against the crit hit chance, and you have the crit hit damage as well. Remember, none of this are like having diminishing return in this game. And also, if you strip away all the gear, if you strip away all the skill and mastery point, the default crit hit chance is 0%. The default crit hit damage is 170%. Again, just for information, it's not going to be used in this formula here. So now the next one is that you have to calculate the average skill, because sometimes you hit, sometimes you don't. In my case, 100% of time I crit. So yeah, so that's a formula. But of course, the higher the crit, depends on the crit and crit hit chance and crit hit damage, because there's a formula to it. So that become a number there. Now bear in mind that there's a monster at the highest level has a resistance. Now I'm playing like Mythic 15 or even below that. There's a monster resistance is 90%. So if you go back to the game, as you see here, for example, you can see that if you play like Mythic 12, the monster resistance is 90%. But you can go lower a bit than 70%, 45%, and so on. So what it means is that the monster will resist whatever damage by 90%. So that is the resist. But you can bring down the resistance through overpower. So overpower will negate that effect. Now, 100% overpower means that you reduce the monster resistance to 0, and so on. So this is this one that you need to look at it like a penalty to your damage. And of course, the higher the higher the overpower, the better chance you have in in doing more damage. I think this is 100% by the way. You see, when you have 100% overpower, your damage actually dealt the same way. But of course, when you have lower than 100%, then you deal substantially lower tile damage. So that's overpower. And after that, I compare the overall adjusted skill, because you have to take a look at the total with the resistance and overpower, then become this effective kind of like a skill damage, and you compare that. I compare that with the baseline. So as I can see, all the comparison is there. So I know that which one will win against what. Now, of course, if you adjust this like to 78%, 78 and 78%, then the whole profile will change. This one will be such a clear win, for example, because of the fact that I haven't capped my crit in this case. But however, because I'm already at 88, then I may need to think twice, whether I want to actually do it or not, because I'm actually losing 2% of DPS by putting even more crit because I over capped the crit. All right, but that is always interesting looking through it. So as I recap, it's 5 major kind of like parameter I'm looking at, and the priority is the overpower, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, shadow power, shadow damage percentage, as well as the damage, and that can apply to any build that you have as well. But overall, this is the way that do it. Now, of course, you can also look into the cooldown reduction and so on and so forth, but there will be another kind of video on, if I do want to get to that part about the effect duration versus cooldown reduction. There will be another topic quite interesting to look at. I may or may not work on that because that will be quite involving, not just focusing on one single power, because right now I'm using Bone Synth as the illustration here on the stat priority. But if I want to do like a cooldown reduction, I have to look at the overall, all the toolkit that I have, and they become a little bit more complex as well. May not worth it, but it's just to say, if you have time, you may want to explore that as well. Now, this is the second video I'm doing on theory crafting. I may do another one on the defensive one, because I think defensive is quite an interesting topic with the damage reduction, stagger damage versus the evasion. We'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed Chronicon. It's one of the best ARPG I've played. It's just so much. If you love theory crafting, you really love this game. Talk to you again soon. Goodbye.